to Elisabeth Hogarth Designs, which is my YouTube channel where I share my crafting, card making, design team samples and a few techniques. I had planned to share with you the next Tell the Bees collection from Craft Consortium, so that will now be coming out on the 23rd of February. So instead of Tell the Bees, I thought I would go through a few of the embossing folders from Lisa Horton Crafts. Now these are 3D embossing folders, and I have to say I have never worked with anything that have produced such detailed designs. So my plan today is to run through a few little techniques, but just to quickly say, in the majority of cases they are going to be using one of these embossing folders, and I've been through my scraps box, so it's either going to be my white cardstock or little pieces of ordinary coloured cardstock, so nothing fancy. On a day when I didn't really feel like creating anything, I actually went through all the embossing folders and I tried different techniques. Now none of these really are my own techniques, they're just things that I've picked up from other crafters, from Pinterest, from the internet, but really when you start playing you begin developing your own ideas, and there are certain things that you prefer to do. So the idea of this particular video is to show you just a few ideas of what I've ended up with. I think I ended up with 16 different things, and this will also show you just how beautiful and how useful these embossing folders can be. The basis of all the techniques we're going to do today involves a piece of white paper and your embossing folder. I'm going to use scraps of card and simply pop that into the embossing folder. This is a Sizzix Big Shot Plus, so all I need to do is to take the main base and one of the cutting plates, pop that on the top and then run it through once. And then you can really see the quality of this emboss, just how deep those markings are and the quality of the deboss. The first technique we're going to try is simply embossing a piece of card and adding some Distress Oxide using the Blooming Peony. In the original I used worn lipstick, but I'm going to try tumbled glass this time. For this technique we're simply going to take the oxide directly from the pad and smooth it over the embossing folder. And you'll notice that the raised area is the background, and this will mean that the flowers themselves will be white. So I'm going to take a piece of card, because I've got room I'm going to use two. You can of course just cut a 6x6 piece of paper, and then this is going to be embossed. Embossed, you open up and this is the effect that you've got. So already you can see that there's detail on these flowers, and the background has got that subtle blue. On the original one I added the pink twice, so I repeated the process, but I like the blue at this subtlety. And if you want to take this one step further and add further detail to the flower, simply take the embossing pad and stroke it. There's almost a flicking and stroking action onto the raised flowers. So you can see there's one with the ink, and there's one without. Both of them are completely stunning and show the quality of the flowers. This is the card that I ended up making with technique number 1. So all I've done is taken the band similar to this one, cut it down, added a few layers of a simple Lisa Horton sentiment and my trademark 3 sequins. The next few ideas are essentially using the same technique, so you will need some embossing ink and some mica powder. So these are with powder and then inks and a few pens, and then here we're mixing it up and using slightly different inks and powders, but I'll show you the overall idea behind it next. So for this particular style we're going to use a wider flower embossing folder, and this one is Budding Bloom, and you'll also need some mica powders and then something like an embossing pad. So they're VersaFine ones. This is a Wow embossing folder. It's whatever you have to hand. I prefer to use this particular one with a brighter piece of card, and I'll show you why in a moment. So let's go ahead and get this one embossed. So we've got this one embossed now, and again you can see the quality of the effects that you get with these folders. There you go. And then we're going to enhance this a little bit more simply by brushing some of the embossing ink over the top. And the reason that you're doing this is that you need the mica powder to stick to something. Mica powder won't just settle unless it's got an adhesive or a slightly damp surface to adhere to. So we're going to try the grey soot again, and as I say, I will try and link all of these below the video, but of course you can use your own powders that you have to hand. But if you dab this on, so I do a mixture of dabbing on and then blending in, and you need very little of these products to get a fantastic result, but it lifts up those flowers from the background and gives the detail within the embossed petals. So let's just keep smoothing that in and brushing it away slightly. And there you go. Stunning, isn't it? It's almost like it's a real embossed piece of silver. So we'll work on just cleaning up the surface. And the other thing that I will do away from the camera is I will add some fixative. So it will either be an art fixative spray or a cheap hairspray. And at a pinch you can use a very fine misting of water just to set the mica in place. Here is card number 2. So again, it's just a matter of taking that deep pink and layering it up onto some black cardstock, and then again printing and die cutting another sentiment and some simple sequins. You can also take the embossing ink to the folder itself. So again, we want the flowers to be raised up, so we're going to add, so I smooth it over. It's a mixture of smoothing over the clear embossing ink and then patting it down just for some extra give. This time we'll try another piece of coloured card or paper, and we'll run this through the machine. So this time the embossing powder will go onto the back of this panel here, and the flowers themselves will remain bold and clear. So this time we're going to take the mica powder, which is copper pot, and again just dab it into place, and you'll see that the powder will hold on top of the background like so. I do like it in these bolder colours, and the mica powder is just stunning. It makes it look like it's a real piece of gold or metal. And then I take the bigger brush and then I work it in a little bit. You can see that the flowers are still raised, but the background is covered in that stunning mica powder. So if you want to add a little bit more interest to the flowers themselves, use a distress ink. This is a brown one, Vintage Photo, and gently stroke across the flowers, not too much, and you'll find that it hits the petals where that 3D embossing is highest. There we go. Don't want to do too much, don't want to overwhelm it. So that's another technique you can try. So you've got a little bit of embossing ink, a little bit of mica, and then a little bit of ink over the top. This is how I ended up using card number 3. So this was where we added embossing ink to the folder, and then we blended in mica powder to the back, and then we brushed brown ink over the top just to raise those petals. So I've added another sentiment, and again I think that makes a really simple and sweet little card. Instead of using the distress inks, we're going to try the oxides this time. So it's just a matter of adding the colour. This time I'm tapping the colour down. I'll go with some yellow next, just to add some interest. And if you find that you end up with any ink on the pad, just very quickly rub it away. If things like that don't bother you, then you can leave it. I doubt it will do it any real harm, but I like to keep things as clean as possible. And then we're going to add some paper. I'll try 2 pieces again because it gives me 2 options. And run it through the embossing folder. Let's take a look. Oh, I like that effect too, that works. There we go. So again, you've got the colour on the background and the raised areas are white. Let's try a little bit of pink brushed over the top. You don't want it to be on the entire piece, so that's with the pink ink added. And then if we want to add a little bit of mica powder, we'll just add some embossing ink and take I think we'll go for a yellow. So this is Sunshine, which is rather apt, and we'll see how this turns out. So again, tap it on to the areas that you want to highlight. This is card number 4. There you can see all the ink work there, and then I've teamed it up with a couple of leaf dies and yet again another sentiment and some pearl embellishments. Technique number 5 involves heat embossing over your embossed image. So to do that, you can either carry on using your embossing ink, but this time I want to try my embossing dauber, so this may or may not work. So this time all I'm going to do is to apply the embossing ink using the dauber. This is a Ranger, a Tim Holtz product, and I quite often forget about it as a product, so let's give it a go and we can see how effective this is. If not, we'll go back and we'll use our embossing pad. So we've quite literally and liberally added ink into there, and we'll try 2 more pieces and we'll get this one embossed. Okay, so we have 2 pieces beautifully embossed, and then it's a matter of taking your embossing powder, and you can mix and match the colours if you wish, but let's see how the ink takes. Yeah, that's worked beautifully. So I'm going to try one with more yellow. Predominant colour will be yellow. You can of course mix and match these colours up, but I don't have extra pots, so I tend to just do a little bit at a time and hope that I'm not going to contaminate . So our heat tool is nicely warmed up now. Let's emboss these powders and see the result that we get. Technology let me down a little bit because my camera ran out on my phone, but if you can see, that is the embossed with the yellow and the green, and here we have it with the more subtle blue. So again, another really cool technique, really simple to do but easy when you know how. I'm just going to try a little bit of blue ink over the top of this flower one here. So let's pull you in a little bit so that you can have a look. So we're just going to lightly stroke it over just to highlight those stunning magnolia petals. Let's just do a little bit there. There we go. This is card number 5, where we use the technique of the embossing powder on the background. This particular one I didn't ink anything on the top, I just left it plain, but this one I added a little ink. So that's a really clean and simple card, and I still got this extra bit of square where I can make a similar type of card. So I just cut it down, mounted it onto some green and added a sentiment and a sequin or 3. The next 2 aren't really techniques, but I wanted to show you that you can actually emboss onto acetate and onto glitter card. So if you've got those in your stash, it's well worth giving them a try. I really like the effect of the mirror card. So this is your gloss one and this is your matte mirror. So it works particularly well with these deck plate because it gives it an industrial look. For these 2 examples, I used a range of your blue Nuvo colours, and they are, any style will work. And on this one, those were the three colours that I've just shown you. On this one, I added it with some mica powder as well. So don't be afraid to mix and match the elements that you're using. So let me show you how I came up with this one on the water droplets. So this time it was a matter of taking your white card and running it through the folder. Look at the bubbles on there. The original one I did in blue, but it's always good to try different colours. I haven't used these Nuvo drops for a while, so I thought that it's a good way of using up things that you've probably already got. They need a good shake probably, but they're still, this one's a little bit thicker, so let's see. You don't need to go out and buy lots of new products. Just have a look around you and see what items that you have that you can use. Well, that one's a little bit more pearlized. The orange was glossy, and then I've got a green one here as well. Okay, so we've got our oranges and our greens. Let's just go in a little bit so that you can see. And then I'm just taking an ordinary sponge, mixing them up on a acrylic block, and then pouncing it over the card. You could actually put a little bit of sparkle or mica powders back over the top. If we take a little bit of yellow mica powder, just tap a fairly generous amount onto the block, like so, and then you want to add a little mist of water, not too much, and then go back in with your sponge, mix the mica over the top. I'm assuming that the Nuvo drops are water soluble, which is why you're able to work with them in this way. So there you go. There it is again with the mica powder, and this is the original. So you can see the difference in the coverage that you get. Here's card number 6, where we use the technique using the Nuvo drops and the mica powder. So it's come up really nicely with the mica powder blend, and what I did for the background is I took my base card and I ran it through the weave embossing folder just to give me another little bit of texture, and then I've added another easy sentiment and a few sequins. On to technique number 7, and this time couldn't get much easier because we're going to be using water soluble watercolor pens. We're going to use our sunflower embossing folder, and on the deboss side, so the background is embossed, is raised, and the flowers themselves are debossed. And because these are sunflowers, we're just going to add a little bit of colour to the centres. Then we are going to again add a light spritz of water and just allow the colours to mix up a little bit before you're going to add the paper. And then we're going to lay the paper over the top. There we go. And then I'll get this one embossed. beautiful. I think I like those ones than my first one. There we go. Don't they look beautiful? So you're going to leave those to dry. You could add some shimmer. The background of this one also had some colour on it. So all that happened there was when I added the colour for the flowers, I used the coordinating stronger ink on those embossed background areas. So it's a really good technique for those of you that like working with your watercolour pens, or you could try different watercolour paints and things. So as I say, use what you have to hand. Here's our next card, and I think it's one of my favourite. This is the one where we simply use the watercolour brushes inside the embossing folder and ran it through, and all I've done is add some silver sparkle and add it to a piece of orange cardstock. Still got one left over, so I really like that type of a card because you can allow the embossing folders to do all the work for you. Looks far more complicated than it really is. Just to quickly mention as well, this was another thing that I tried where I had ink on the background, and then I tried using the watercolour brushes to highlight the areas. I added a too dark a colour and too much here, but if you are more subtle with it, that might be something else that you would want to try. For me, it didn't work on that occasion, but you live and learn, don't you? For the 8th technique that we're going to look at today, we are going to mask and colour the card before we emboss it. So this time I'm going to use the Dotty embossing folder, and you're going to need another scrap of paper, some washi tape that are different thicknesses. You can use masking tape, you can use whatever you have to hand, but you'll get a more interesting result if you aim to use different widths of tape. So just simply pulling these across at an angle. I will keep this tape and use it a couple more times. This is good quality washi tape. Hopefully it won't affect the paper, but be gentle when you remove it, and then you can, as I say, reuse it again. So that's our tape in place, and then I've got a couple of oxides. So I'm going to go in with the worn lipstick first. This time I've got my mat down because I want to blend the ink across, and I don't want it to be too harsh on the paper. So rather than applying it directly from the pad, I add the ink to my craft mat and then I bring it across. We then got picked raspberry, just to add a little bit more colour, and then I'll leave some areas of white as well. I'm going to make this area here stronger, and then down here we'll make it stronger. I've made a card previously in this style and the colours were more muted, so I want to see what the effect is if I add deeper colour. So then we simply peel away the masking tape, and then we will pop it into our embossing folder ready to emboss. Here's how it looks when it's embossed, and it's a really neat finish. So all I'm going to do is add some coloured cardstock and a sentiment, and I'll have another card that's good to go. Here we go. Card number 8. Really simple and effective card. All I did was add a pink mat that I also embossed with the dotty folder and laid a sentiment across the stripes to make it feel like the whole thing is looking upwards. These are the 8 techniques that I have shown in this video, and I've now got the swatches ready for future use. So really quickly, this is my own little shorthand, but I leave a sample of the technique that I tried. I've written the embossing folder, and then the background, the oxides that I've used, and any little notes that I used as I went along. And then the front or the foreground, I then say how I achieved that effect as well. So those are the 8 that I've worked on today. I've still got another 8 here. If you want any more information about these techniques, these ones are pretty straightforward, and I have tried to explain a few of them as we've gone, then please do let me know in the comments. Alternatively, let me know what you've tried and what's worked for you. So we've got a nice batch of swatches for future use, and we've also got 8 simple and effective cards, each one of them different, and I'm sure any member of my family would love to receive one of these. Please do give the embossing folders a go. Let me know how you get on. I would really love it if you could like this video and subscribe to my channel, and let me know what type of things that you would like to see in the future. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you again soon.